So I've tried to record this like 4 or 5 times now, but I have really loud neighbors and it's Christmas Eve. So we're gonna kind of take what we get here with this last one because I'm not stopping it again. Welcome back. It's been a while. Some updates. One, I am almost done with my master's, which is where I've been this whole time, is doing work on my master's degree. Two, we're gonna roll over to less of a hobby page and more of like a booktube page because I want to talk about the books that I'm reading. I think that would be a fun, funky, fresh way to do things. So I started reading again for fun in March of this year. I set a cute, cheeky little goal of 15 books as my Goodreads yearly uh, book goal. You know how they do that thing? I read 68. I'm still reading. I have 2 books that I'm trying to finish before the end of the year, but I wanted to put this up before New Year's. So here we are. We're going to do reading wrap up. I'm going to try to make this a annual thing where we do it every year. And we're going to talk about the things that I've read because I need to talk to somebody. Um, Disclaimer, there's going to be spoilers. If I hated a book and I hated it because of some plot twist, I will talk about the plot twist. I'll warn you. I'll be like, hey, spoilers coming. And then you have time to like skip it. Um, but I will be discussing things that I did not like because there are plenty. Also, just like quick trigger warning, some of the books do talk about sexual assault and domestic abuse and self-harm. Um, so I will notify you before I talk about stuff like that. I'll say like, hey, this is the trigger warning. Skip through if you want to not talk about it. Every book on here is like organized. There's a picture of the book cover, so if there's going to be a spoiler, you can skip until you see the next book cover. If there's going to be a trigger warning, you can skip until you see the next book cover, etc., etc. So let's start off kind of as strong as we can. This is You Say It First by Katie Cotugno. I rated this at 3.5 stars. It follows this girl, Meg. She's kind of like your type A, I need to get into Harvard, Yale, really academic girl. She volunteers at a polling center. I had to pause because I had to move because people couldn't be quiet. She volunteers at a polling center, and her job is to basically to get people to like sign up to vote. She has to call people and get them to do that. She calls this guy Colby, and he wants no part in it. And something about that triggers her, makes her want to talk to him more. And they become kind of like cell phone friends. And eventually it blossoms into a romance, if you can even really call it that. I didn't really like how it ended. It was kind of open-ended about whether or not they would be together. It was messy. It was very clearly like the conflict was going to arise because they didn't really know each other outside of the phone, and that's exactly what happened. 3 out of 5 stars, solid enough that I read the entire thing, but not so solid that I didn't like thoroughly read the whole thing. It was a lot of skimming for me. Unpregnant by Jenny Hendricks and Ted Kaplan, 4.5 out of 5 stars. We follow our girl Veronica. She has been impregnated by her dumbass boyfriend. She wants to get an abortion. She doesn't want her family to know, so she calls upon her old friend Bailey, who is kind of an outcast in school. They don't really talk anymore. And she asks for help kind of crossing state lines to do it. It's a fun read. It's a good time. It's in no way realistic. Some of the things that they do in this book are wild. If you're going to read it, I recommend reading it and then watching the movie that it's based off of, but the movie is also fantastic. So 4.5 stars. My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. So we are following Abby and Gretchen. They're best friends. One day they go out to this kind of like cabin in the woods situation, and Gretchen disappears for a little bit. When she comes back, she's just completely different. Turns out she's been possessed. Abby is going to try to help her through the possession. She's going to try to get her an exorcism, and she's trying to save her best friend's life. 4.5, really 4 stars. I am not a big fan of body horror, and this is one of those that really just has some dark, twisty, messed up moments in it. I also didn't really like the conflict resolution at the end. It was spoiler alert, big spoiler alert. It was basically like the power of friendship will overcome everything, and I didn't really like vibe with that. So, 4 stars. Tales from the Hinterland by Melissa Albert, 2 out of 5 stars. I don't remember what this book was about. I know it was short stories. I know the cover was pretty. That's about it. Bridgerton. The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, 1.5 out of 5 stars. It had me, it really did, up until trigger warning, big trigger warning, up until the sexual assault piece. Wasn't great after that. It lost any kind of holding that I had in me. It's like 400 and something pages. I forced my way through it. I finished it. 1.5 stars. I will never touch this book again. Watch the Netflix show if you want, I guess, but the Netflix show also does some things that I don't really like. So I didn't even care enough to tell you these characters' names. That's Simon and that's Daphne. Whatever. The Return by Rachel Harrison. Oh my god, this one messed me up real bad. So this one follows two people, Julie and Elise. And Julie goes missing, and Elise is the only person who believes that she will ever come back. And then one day she does. She's different, though. She's kind of messy in ways that Julie did not, or that Elise didn't think she was before. And Julie invites them all out to another cabin in the woods situation, and things kind of progress from there. I read a lot of horror. I read a lot of thriller. This is one of the only books this year that actually gave me nightmares. 5 out of 5 stars. Unbound by Annie Berg. Anne E. Berg. It's a children's literature book. It's told entirely in verse. I was a fan of it. It follows the story of this girl, Grace. I once again had to pause and come back. As I was saying, it follows this girl, Grace. She is a slave. She's moved to the main house. She is trying to escape because she hears that things are going to be changing in the house. I liked it because it covered a different aspect of slavery that I didn't see in books when I was a kid. Spoiler alert, instead of running to the north, she actually runs to the woods and hangs out at this kind of like a colony of escaped slaves. That's where she lives when she escapes. 3 out of 5 stars just because I'm not a big fan of things that are written in verse, and I also am not a big fan of children's literature, so it kind of loses me on 2 counts there. Why aren't we clicking? There we go. Same thing kind of goes with The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963 by Christopher Paul Curtis. 4 out of 5 stars. It's a good read for kids. It's a good way to kind of talk to them about the civil rights movement. It follows this family, and they're driving down to Birmingham, Alabama to drop their oldest son off with his grandmother because he's been acting up and they can't seem to get him on the right track. If you know anything about history, you know what happened in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to spoil it. He does a really good job of weaving the history in with the actual plot of the book. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching it too, because that's why I had to read this. I had to teach it to a class. But again, children's literature always kind of docks a star there because I'm not a big fan of it. Rat Queen, Sass and Sorcery. 3 out of 5 stars. I looked at my Goodreads. I think I actually labeled this as 5 out of 5 after I read it. Looking back on it, it's not super memorable. I liked it when I read it because I was really into my D&D campaign at the time. I play as a gnome, in case you were wondering. But I do own most of these, and I have not picked them up. I read the first one, and I was like, I'm going to read all of them. But I ended up not doing that. So 3 out of 5 stars because I didn't go back to it. Daphne Byrne. Daphne Byrne follows the story of a girl. Her father has just died. Her mother basically joins a cult to try to speak to her father. The cult is into, the devil. And somewhere along the way, Daphne ends up kind of attracting the attention of this spirit demon thing who attaches itself to her. It's kind of a love story. It's really weird. I hated it. It's part of Joe Hill's comic line with DC. I think there's 4 or 5 of the Hill House comics, and it's just not strong at all. Still not the weakest one. We'll talk about the weakest one because I did read all of them this year. But 0.5 stars awarded just for the cover art alone. Look at that thing. That's absolutely horrifying. Snow, Glass, and Apples by Neil Gaiman and Colleen Duran. 5 out of 5 stars. It's a retelling of Snow White. I'm not even going to really go into it. You should just read it for yourself, to be honest. Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper. I read this for class. I appreciated the representation that we get for cerebral palsy. I liked Melody's voice. I liked her character. I didn't like how one-dimensional the side characters were. I didn't like that there's a point in the book where there's this random family tragedy that could occur but doesn't occur. It just felt really weird. I hated having to sit here and read about how awful everybody treated Melody, including the adults in her life who are supposed to be supporting her, like her teachers. it was really hard to stomach at points, so I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for something that does feature good, healthy representation, there are other books out there that you could take a look at. This one wouldn't be at the top of my list if I were going to recommend things like that, but some people are still really in love with it. I know she just wrote the sequel, Out of My Heart. I don't think I'll read that. But, you know, if this was your wave, then congrats to you. It just was not for me. Oh, Anna Dressed in Blood. So this book follows Cass. He is he's a monster hunter, ghost hunter, whatever way you want to put it. It's a legacy title. His dad was also a monster ghost hunter. His mom is like a kitchen witch. Those are the exact words that they used to describe her. So he's into all the supernatural stuff. He gets called down to investigate this house where this girl's spirit has just been like eviscerating people. His father was killed by another spirit, so he's kind of like tormented by the fact that his father has been killed by something he couldn't stop. And it just kind of spirals out of control around like the 200-page mark when you think the conflict has been resolved, and then they just kind of keep writing. I suspect this was because a sequel was already in the works, and they were like, we have to lead into the sequel somehow. But, you know, 4.5 stars out of 5. It had me up until that last chunk where it was like, what are you doing with the story? Why are we like this? Same kind of deal with Girl of Nightmares. This is the sequel to Anna Dressed in Blood, 2.5 stars. This is proof that the sequel is not always as great as the original was. 2.5 stars awarded because, again, I love Cass's character. I love Anna's character. The side characters from the first book follow through pretty well with this second one. But the plot was just all over the place. I could not tell you what they were trying to do here with this book. But whatever it was, they were not succeeding. So 2.5 stars. Oh, every TikTok girlie's favorite, A Court of Thorns and Roses. So this follows Feyre. She is a human at the start of the book. She is out hunting and she sees a fairy and she's like, we don't like the fairies around here. I'm going to kill that thing. And so she kills him. And another fairy basically kidnaps her in response. So it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, which is one of my like 2 big things that I love. I love a good Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I love a good Persephone Hades retelling. The characters for the most part were likable. Tamlin, who is the main guy, he's something, you know, he's lovable. You really want to root for him. There comes a point where another conflict is introduced. It's the Under the Mountain sequence. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read the book, I'm not going to spoil it for you because it is pretty important if you're going to try to go through it. At that point, I was feeling pretty disconnected from the characters. I didn't really recognize any of them. The way that she had kind of shifted their actions and their development over felt weird to me. Like the way Tamlin acted Under the Mountain felt nothing like how he acted throughout the book. So it lost me around that mark. So 3.5 out of 5 stars. I am reading the 3rd book, not the last book, the 3rd book in the series now. I have about 300 pages left, and I did read the 2nd one. But I think once the main arc is kind of finished, I'm going to stop reading them because I'm not really like super, super into them. But we'll talk about the 2nd one a little further on. Harleen. So this is your standard Harley Quinn story. 3 out of 5 stars. I was hoping for some new twists or takes on it. It's the same thing that we've kind of been talking about for years with this character, but the artwork is stunning. Even the slipcover on the book adds to it. It adds dimension to it. So if you're going to go out and read it, I recommend buying it on an actual hardcover. Don't buy it like on an e-reader because it's not going to be the same for you. I don't know why I read this girl-splaining. I thought it would be like a cute little like fun, funky, fresh way of explaining how things happen to women. It wasn't. It was very much like American Girl, here's how your body works. The art wasn't great. It was loaded with references to the author's childhood. I am about 10 to 15 years younger than the author, so I didn't really get many of those references. So 2.5 stars. Cursed Objects by J.W. Ocker. 3 out of 5 stars. I bought this book. I bought it very quickly when I saw it up on sale on Amazon. I was hoping to be obsessed with it. It took me so long to read. Most of the information that was given to me, I already knew. I'm really into like stupid like cursed objects or like old myths, that kind of like folktale kind of energy. So I was hoping for new info and I didn't get it. And he writes very well. He writes beautifully, but he writes so much that it was just like 4 or 5 pages per object, and I was like not invested in it. So it took me a very long time to get through this book. 3 out of 5 stars. The illustrations are really cool. Some of the information is really cool. It just wasn't for me. Ghost Tree by Bobby Kernow, 4 out of 5 stars. So we follow our main character, Brant. His marriage is falling apart. His life is falling apart. And his grandfather dies. So he travels back, I believe, to Japan to his grandparents' house. And he finds out that there's a tree where he can talk to ghosts. So he runs into different ghosts. It's almost like a Christmas Carol in the sense that like he talks to different types of ghosts, like past, present situation. It has a very sad ending. It loses a star for me because of the sad ending, even though the ending does make sense, and I would be angry if there was a happy ending because it wouldn't make sense for the character or his development. It still stung a little bit because you start rooting for this guy about 30 pages in and you realize he's not going to get his way, and it just sucks. But I would recommend it. It's a pretty solid graphic novel. Plunge. So Plunge follows this kind of like, what do they call them? Not a carnage crew, but like a crew that's going to like clean up another shipwreck, and they're getting these signals from this ship that went down like years ago where they assumed everybody was dead. And when they get there, they find the entire crew like technically still alive, but at what cost? There's a supernatural element to it. There's almost like an alien-esque monster element to it. This is one of the Hill House comics. It's one of the 2 that Joe Hill wrote himself. It's a pretty solid story. I didn't like the artwork. It got a little convoluted towards the middle. It is what it is, you know. Not the strongest, but definitely not the weakest. Right in the middle. The one that I didn't read from this series this year, I actually read it last year, was Dollhouse, and that one was also pretty good, pretty run of the mill. I can't remember who wrote that one. I don't have notes on me, but if I were going to rank them, it would probably be this one before Dollhouse. So it would go like Basket Full of Heads, which I'm about to talk about. This one, Dollhouse, Daphne Byrne, and then we'll talk about my last choice later. Basket Full of Heads, yes. Fantastic story, excellent execution. It follows this girl. Her name is June. She goes to visit her boyfriend Liam. In his small town, there's a prison and some prisoners escape, and the power goes out and there's just like absolute chaos. She's attacked. She picks up this axe that's in like her boyfriend's father's house. And it turns out that it's a cursed axe, and whatever she kills with it does not die. So she's running around chopping off heads and keeping the heads literally in a basket, and they're talking to her. The plot twist was really well done. I kind of guessed it probably like 10, 15 pages before the end, which is actually pretty good to keep me engaged for that long without me guessing it. The art was phenomenal. It's a really good story. It's god tier in terms of the Hill House comics. So if you're going to read only one of them, I recommend this one. So if you are triggered by mentions of sexual assault or sexual violence or domestic violence or anxiety or depression, this is the point where you should click out. Just scrub it until you don't see this image anymore. I'm going to give you a second to do that, and I'm going to drink a drink while you do. All right. The Lola Woods is the worst book I read this year. If I am remembering correctly. I am about 99% sure it is the worst book I read this year. Goodreads doesn't give you the option of giving things 0 stars, but this is a 0-star book. We follow our 2 characters who are L and V, which automatically red flag. Why are you naming your characters after letters? They wake up in the movie theater. They're covered in dirt and debris, and they have no idea how they got there. It's a very twisted, webby story. If I remember correctly, and I'm kind of hoping I don't, there is a point where one of the women in the town is so overcome with grief that she turns into a sinkhole. Her body like physically opens up and people start sinking into it, which is a metaphor, but still sucks. The short of it, and like here's your spoiler alert, the short of it is that in the town, the men have been sexually assaulting the women and drugging them so that they don't remember it, and then leaving them places, and then like gaslighting them into thinking nothing is wrong. So the entire plot is just run by body horror and sexual assault, and I hated it. I hated it so much. At the end of the book, they find out that there's like some mushroom where you can like remember what happened to you, and they give it to these women, and they're like, you can choose to remember these horrible things, or you can continue to forget, which is no way to live, because you are already burdened with the thought that something could have happened to you. So now you either have to find out exactly what it was, or live with the thought that everything you know is a lie. Awful book. Would not recommend it. The art wasn't even great. I'm like choked up and disgusted thinking about it. Would not recommend to others at all. Whew. Jesus. Okay. Let's talk about my boy Eddie P. Poe, Stories and Poems by Gareth Hines. 3 out of 5 stars. I'm always looking for new graphic novel adaptations of Edgar Allan Poe's work because I teach and the kids do better with pictures. This is your pretty run-of-the-mill standard one. I can't remember what stories it includes. I don't think it includes The Fall of the House of Usher or The Mask of Death, if that's what it's called, which are 2 of the ones that I teach. And I think that's why it lost points for me, because it didn't have the actual materials I needed. But it was pretty good. If you are a fan of Edgar Allan Poe, I would recommend it to you. If you're a teacher looking for resources, I would not. Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. I don't remember anything about this book. I think I read this in June. I don't remember any of the stories. Emily Carroll is one of my favorite artists, though, so she gets 2.5 stars just for her artwork. That's all I can really tell you about this book. It's short stories. I don't know what they're about. All right. Let's talk about the flat share. Okay. It follows Tiffy. She's this woman. I think she's coming out of a relationship. She needs to move very quickly. She finds this flat share ad. It's this dude, Leon. There's one bed in the apartment, one bed at the inn. There's one bed. They work opposite schedules, so they never see each other. They share the bed. They like swap out the sheets or whatever. Shenanigans ensue. 3.5 stars. It's cute, you know, like there are moments where they like run into each other or they almost run into each other. A lot of it is done where their relationship is built through post-it notes, which I liked a lot. Where it falls flat for me is the end conflict, because it wasn't even really like a huge conflict to be dealt with. And after they actually meet and start hanging out, all of the spark that they had kind of feels like it was snuffed out. So I stopped being invested in their relationship at about like the 200, 250 page mark, if there's even that many pages, about halfway through. And it was kind of hard for me to kind of push through and finish. So 3.5 stars because the premise is cute, the beginning is cute, it had me for quite some time, but the end just fell flat for me. So The Midnight Library. So trigger warning, if you are sensitive to mentions of suicide, or if you are sensitive to mentions of depression or anxiety, or the death of a pet, because that is a pretty prevalent part of this, scrub forward until you don't see this image anymore. Again, gonna give you a second to do that. Ooh, silence. All right. So, The Midnight Library follows Nora. I think her name is Nora Seed. She is having the roughest time. She like loses her job like 10 minutes into the page. Her cat gets hit by a car. A hot guy that she like turned down once rolls up and is like, "Hey, was that your cat? It's dead now." The cat was basically the only thing she had going for her. She sits down and she's like, "I'm going to kill myself." And she tries. But she wakes up in this library, and the library has all these books on the shelves, and each book is a story that she could jump into, a version of her life. So you basically follow her as she works out these different versions and tries to see if there's one that she feels most comfortable in, that she wants to stay in. Some of them she's a scientist. Some of them she is married to the hot guy and has a daughter. Some of them she has a different cat. In the end, because I'm going to talk to you about the end, she does choose to go back to her actual life. And like, yes, we kind of guessed that that would happen from page 1. Like there was no way that he was going to write this book and not sneak in the lesson there that your life is the life you should have. But it is ultimately unsatisfying, because you know Nora's going back to no job and no cat and the same life that she was trying to escape the first time, just with a new kind of perspective on it. So 3 out of 5 stars for a good concept and a cute cover and a pretty solid story. The ending, again, is just where it kind of fell flat for me. This book, oh my god. Okay, so Counting Down with You follows our protagonist, Karina. Her parents are gone for 28 days. They are very strict, your stereotypical Indian parents, which I get it. I am half Indian, so I get it. And I was really, really excited about kind of seeing myself reflected in a protagonist, but this girl was the most annoying human being on the face of the planet. If I could punch a book character, I would. Um, there's no advocacy at all on her part. There is little to no responsibility for her actions. She ends up in this like fake dating trope with this dude, Ace, who she's supposed to be tutoring. He's the school bad boy. She knows that her actions have repercussions, but she refuses to kind of face the facts about any of that. In the end, she tells her parents she doesn't want to be a doctor. I think it's a doctor that they want her to be, whatever the Indian stereotype of the month is. I don't know. And she ends up lying to them as the book ends about her dating this dude. And I have a lot of issues with that. So I have a lot of issues with the way that my culture was represented in this book. I have a lot of issues with the way that her relationship with her family and her parents specifically was handled in the book. Some of the things that her mother says to her are really triggering, and I didn't enjoy that. Overall, 2 out of 5 stars. I bought it as a beach read. It really just left me very unsatisfied and very, very upset and annoyed and angry. And hoping that somebody someday will write a strong Indian female protagonist that won't make me want to rip my hair out. So there's that. Oh my god, I was on such a reading slump now that I'm looking at this in order. The Big Shebang, The Herstory of the Universe According to God the Mother. It's like a long pause to kind of gather my thoughts about how much I also hated this book. I thought I was going to be getting a pretty cool kind of in-depth look at some of history's forgotten female figures. You know, like I thought like Lilith from the Bible, for example, would have like a good section where I learned more about her. Instead, what I got was kind of like your peak Tumblr, TikTok feminism. I didn't like how the book was written. I didn't like the art of the book. I didn't like that the actual historical parts were kind of just like scrubbed over with these like really weird I hate all men commentaries. Like I understand how feminism works because I'm a decent human being, and hating men is not the same thing as being a feminist. And that's what this book kind of made me feel like. It was like, if you don't hate men, you can't be a good feminist. 1 out of 5 stars. There's some information in there that's useful, but I wouldn't like hand it to somebody. I think I actually donated it like right after I read it. So, ooh, Emma in the Night. Okay, so Emma in the Night follows 2 sisters, Emma and where's her name? I have her written down. Emma and Cass, and they disappear one night. I think Emma is 17 and Cass is like 15. And 3 years later, Cass comes back, but Emma doesn't. So you're following Cass and her family as they try to track down where Emma went, what's going on with Emma. The plot twist in this book hit me so hard I had to like take a break. It is a fantastic read. It is 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend it. I don't even have my copy anymore because I loaned it out to somebody because it's just so, so good. The Suicide House. So The Suicide House by Charlie Donnelly follows Rory and Lane. They are a married couple. They are investigating this murder that happened, or this incident that happened at the suicide house, where 4 teenagers, I want to say it was 4, were found dead. It's a really, really good thriller. The twist happens, if you've been paying attention as you read the book, you can guess it probably like 3 or 4 chapters before it's revealed. But again, 3 or 4 chapters before the reveal for a guess is not bad at all. That's actually pretty solid considering. So yeah, I would recommend it. 4 out of 5 stars. It loses a star for me because of the whole body horror thing, which I've talked about before already. Excuse me. I was trying not to cough into my mic. I didn't give a trigger warning for this because it is called The Suicide House, but if I remember correctly, it doesn't actually deal with any suicidal instances. It's just that like the actual deaths are painted as a suicide. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but I don't remember being particularly triggered or caught off guard by anything. And I remember thinking that The Suicide House was kind of like a red herring of a title. So, let's keep going. I don't even think we're halfway through, to be honest with you. This is like book 24. Um, so Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. 5 out of 5 stars. We follow our girl Noemi. She is going to check in on her cousin who married this random white guy and has been writing letters that are like, "Hey, he's trying to kill me. Please come get me." I don't want to spoil it for you. Fantastic book. It's actually like a 4.9 out of 5 for me because there is a part at the end that I don't like at all. I don't like how Noemi's story is kind of like wrapped up. I don't like the person she ends up with, but it is what it is. You take what you can get. So, solid book, really left me messed up. I don't have COVID. I just like keep choking on air because I've been talking for so long. Beautiful Darkness. 5 out of 5 star read. We follow this kind of little princess, Aurora. She's minding her business, she's living her life, and suddenly she is evicted from her home, which happens to be the body of a small child who was murdered in the woods. Super dark, twisty read, deceptively cute. Like, the illustrations are deceptively cute. I thought this was going to be almost like a little Alice in Wonderland situation. It's not. It's not at all. Highly recommend reading it. It leaves you feeling like somebody just punched you in the stomach in the best possible way. Okay, so here's the thing with, and now I spill the family secrets. Anytime that somebody is writing a memoir, I run the risk when I'm reading it of either projecting too much of my own personal experiences or not relating enough. And in this case, I just didn't relate enough. I was hoping for something that would leave me feeling seen or like connected to the author, and instead it was just like, here is this horrible thing that happened to my family. Here's how we push past it. The art was okay. It was a 3 out of 5 for me. I read it in like an hour and I just I didn't feel satisfied by it, basically. Which is hard to say because obviously like this is somebody's life story and it feels like a really like shit thing to say about someone's life, but I didn't care enough about it to continue like to really read it. I was just skimming it by the end. So Fangs by Sarah Anderson, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, probably closer to 4. The only reason it loses points is because I just wish it were longer. We follow our two characters, Elise and Jimmy. Elise is a vampire and Jimmy is a werewolf, and it kind of just tracks their relationship in these cute little comics. It's adorable. Sarah Anderson just does really cute, fun work. I wish that it was longer. That's really all that it is. It was just too short. I read it in like 30 minutes and I was like, where's the rest of it? So, The Party. Another one of the worst books I've read this year. Okay. You know how we have this kind of idea of like white suburban moms and how they're perfect and their daughters are perfect and they have to strive for perfection all the time? That's what this book is. We follow Kim and we follow her daughter, Hannah. Hannah's turning 16. Kim is throwing her a party. A horrible incident occurs at the party in which one of the girls is like maimed, like she is like physically harmed and permanently damaged for life. And we kind of follow like the repercussions of that. It's not great. It feels like it could have been a novella instead of an entire book. The longer it goes on, the more the author tries to like weave these like plot twists into it, but nothing is twisty. This is just suburbia at its darkest. Which if that's your thing, fine. It was not my thing. I didn't even want to finish it, but I pushed through hoping that something would change and it didn't. So 1 out of 5 stars. The Lost Apothecary. Oh, okay. First of all, the cover, beautiful. We follow Nella and Eliza. Nella is this woman who runs an apothecary, and she runs a secret poison shop for women who are trying to like get rid of the problematic men in their lives. And Eliza shows up on her door one day, and she's like this 12-year-old girl who was sent by her mistress to kind of get a poison to kill the man of the house. Shenanigans ensue, and it's a beautifully told story. The thing that makes it lose the 1.5 stars that it loses for me is that it doesn't focus just on Nella and Eliza. There is a second narration. I can't remember the woman's name. She's a historian. She's trying to like piece together what happened. She finds the apothecary like after years and years, like hundreds of years. And you're following her as she does like all the historic research. It just wasn't great. Her side of the story wasn't great, but the actual like apothecary side was good. So 3.5 stars. Verity. Oh my god. Um, if you read any book off of this list, please make it this one. Verity by Colleen Hoover is one of the darkest and twisted, like one of the most darkest and twisted things I've ever read in my life. I can't even formulate words. We follow Lowen, who is this woman. She's a writer. She is called upon to finish writing this book series that Verity has started. Verity was injured in a car accident and is basically comatose. So her husband, Jeremy, hires Lowen to kind of live in the house and work on the books. And as they're kind of like falling in love, kind of like almost like a Jane Eyre situation, as they're falling in love, things are starting to come out about Verity because Lowen finds her autobiography that she was writing, and it is some dark shit. The plot twist was great. The end of this book left me reeling to the point where I was just like scouring the internet for answers. If you're gonna read one thing off this list, make it this one. This is my second Colleen Hoover book this year. It ends with us. It was recommended to me by one of my friends at work. Trigger warning right now, if you are triggered by domestic abuse, this is not the book for you. Please skim forward. I'm going to give you a second to do that again while I take a sip of my drink because my throat is killing me. We've been talking for 36 minutes now. Oh. All right. So It Ends With Us follows our protagonist, Lily. When she was younger, she was in a relationship with this guy, and he was a homeless student at her school. Her father did not like him. It ended with her father, like, beating the shit out of him. Her dad was also really abusive to her mom, so she's kind of spent her life thinking, like, I'm never going to be like that. She falls in love with this guy, Ryle. It happens very, very quickly. They get married in Vegas very quickly. They buy a house or an apartment together. As she's living with him, she realizes that he has the same kind of tendencies that her father did. He is also super abusive. She finds out that she's pregnant and she decides, like, that is it. I can't do this. I have to get out. And it follows that kind of plot line of her trying to escape this man. 4 out of 5 stars. The realism was not where it needed to be. So the depictions of domestic violence were realistic as far as I can speak to, just based off of what I have experienced in my life. The things that weren't realistic were like Lily walking into this store and being like, I'm going to be a florist, and running into this random woman who's like, I will work for you for free in your floral shop. I'm also related to this really hot guy if you want to date him. Things just kind of like fall into place really easily for Lily in the beginning, and it almost makes her come off as a Mary Sue, and that's how I kind of took myself out of it for a chunk. It's almost a 4.5 star read in the sense that she doesn't go to either man at the end. So her little fling from when she was a kid comes to help her out and like saves her from the man she's married to, but she doesn't end up dating either of them. She ends up just alone with her daughter, which is the best case scenario. Yeah, it's a pretty solid read. I mean, it's got its moments where you're definitely going to be like, what the hell? That would never happen in real life, but it does hit you pretty hard. So, oh, Horror Store. Another Grady Hendricks. This one I loved. I love the concept of an IKEA being haunted. So we're following our main character, Amy. She works at what is basically an IKEA. It's called something else, but it's IKEA. And like weird things are happening. So she's asked to stay with a couple other people overnight to kind of figure out like what the hell is going on in the IKEA. And you find out that it's like built on a haunted prison and there are ghosts everywhere and the ghosts are pissed. So yeah, solid read. The format of this is also really cool. It's almost formatted like an IKEA catalog. I recommend it. It was fun. It was a really fun time. So One of Us is Lying. 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't care for the characters. I thought they were annoying. I didn't care for the plot twist at the end because I didn't find it realistic at all. I'm going to give you a spoiler. This is your warning. The book follows 4 people who are in detention with a 5th party. The 5th party dies. He dies from anaphylaxis. So now they're all under suspicion about who could have killed him because somebody laced his water cup with peanut oil. Here's your big spoiler alert. Here's your big, big warning. Go away now if you don't want to know what happened. It turns out He laced his own cup with peanut oil because he wanted to go out in a blaze of glory and really like mess with these kids' lives. I'm going to tell y'all this right now. I have 17 food allergies. Anaphylaxis is a horrible, horrible way to die. And when I found out that this man had chosen to die that way, I was like, absolutely not. And I shut the book and I didn't touch it again for a week. And then I forced myself to finish it. Yeah, 2 out of 5 stars because, it kept me engaged up until that point. And then I was like, you know what? I don't give a damn about these people anymore. This is stupid. So, The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood. Ooh, publishable Raylo fanfiction. Oh my god, the whole boob heard round the world. I love this book. I love how self-aware it is. I love that, like, our characters, Olive and Adam, are literally just Kylo and Rey, but renamed. My favorite part of this entire book was when, like, they're trying to share a hotel room, and Adam's like, there's gonna be 2 beds, and Olive is like, no, there's gonna be 1 bed. It's the trope. That's what's gonna happen. 1 bed at the inn. It's fun. It's a great time. I recommend it if you love fanfic, which I do. If you love Raylo, that is what this is. Obviously, there are moments in this that are very fanficky, like he's like beating somebody up and he's like, don't talk about the woman I love. And you're like, okay, whatever. But it's a good time. It's a fun time. I feel like I keep saying it's a fun time. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Like this one, The Woman in the Dark. Trigger warning for sexual assault, domestic violence, and, spoiler, murder. So The Woman in the Dark follows this married couple, Sarah and Patrick. Patrick grew up in this house. He thought that the house was the world's greatest place to live. His family moved out, a new family moved in, and they were promptly murdered. Everybody was massacred in the house. So the house goes up for sale again, and he decides to buy it without really consulting his wife. It's messy. It's all over the place. You find out, and here's your, again, spoiler warning and your trigger warning for abuse and sexual assault. You find out that Patrick himself was being abused by his parents in the house, and all of these ideas that he had about the house being perfect were just kind of like his coping mechanism for what was happening to him. He ends up lashing out against his wife and his children. One of his kids ends up in the hospital. The other one, the daughter, is sent away for her own safety. And as his wife is trying to escape, he does actually sexually assault her in the basement and tries to kill her. It's a whole thing. It's a very twisty web. It was just a really convoluted plot, and it felt like it really banked on trauma response to kind of keep you engaged, which is not anyone's kind of favorite book. So 2 out of 5 stars, because up until I realized what was happening, I was like, oh, I wonder what kind of ghost it is. And then I realized there is no ghost. It's just horrible. So yeah. Sorry I haven't texted you back by Alicia Cook. This is poetry. It was good. Some of them were pretty hard hitting. They hit me in the gut when it came to like my own anxiety and my own personal experiences. 3 out of 5 because it is very much Tumblr poetry. There's not much else to say there, really. It's kind of what you would expect from like a long Instagram caption, basically. Victor and Nora follows our 2 characters who, if you are familiar with the DC comic universe at all, you know exactly who they are. Nora has this like crazy disease that she's going to die from, and Victor is trying to freeze her so that doesn't happen. It's a whole thing. Their romance is cute. Nora is a fantastic character. Victor's kind of obnoxious, pretty annoying. The end of this was heartbreaking. It's 3.5 stars for me because Victor, I couldn't stand him. He was the worst. Yes, Speak by Laurie Halls Anderson, illustrated by Emily Carroll. This is the graphic novel. I don't want to talk too much about it. It is 5 out of 5 stars. If you've read the book, you need to read the graphic novel, period. If you thought that the book was good on its own, wait till you see illustrations with it. Emily Carroll does a fantastic job with this book. To the point where I'm getting like choked up thinking about it. I read this when I was in middle school, I want to say, or early high school for the first time, like the actual novel itself. And I hadn't picked it up because it was just so jarring and just such an experience to get through. So when I picked this up as a graphic novel, I knew I was going to have to kind of prepare myself for it. And I'm glad I did, because the way that these illustrations will hit you in the chest is truly something else. So 5 out of 5. I highly, highly recommend you get this one. Same thing with The Tradition by Jericho Brown. So this is poetry. It's poetry about his life and about being a black man in America. Um, it is deceptively simple. So I read this for a creative writing class and I was like, cool, like the book is like 90 pages. That'll take me 10 minutes to read. I was there for 2 hours just dissecting poems. He is such a fantastic writer and he has such a way with layering his words and layering meaning. Um, any of his duplex poems do this really well. So I think if you're going to read anything out of the book, look up his duplex poems and then see if you want the rest of the book, because it really is. It's so worth it. There's so much there. Stuff I've been feeling lately. I believe this was published before. Sorry, I haven't texted you back. 2 out of 5 stars. I thought this one was just weaker than the other one. I liked the poems in the other one a lot more. This one I found myself kind of dragging through. Um, yeah, it was more tumblery than the other one. So I couldn't really get into it. So, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Oh my god. Okay. So Taylor Jenkins Reid has this way with her characters and with her novels where you get so attached to these people, and it's not even just the main characters. You find yourself attached to the side characters too. And there's always a point in her books where I have to physically close them and take like a deep breath and stop myself from crying. This book is no exception. So we're following Evelyn. She's a movie star, or she's trying to be a movie star. It's the early 60s. And she's trying to navigate life, and she knows that she's hot. That's the best part about her. Like, there's no like cutting corners. She's like, I am a sexy beast. I'm going to use men to get what I want. She crosses paths with another actress, Celia, and it kind of develops from there. Their friendship develops, their entire relationship develops. It is a beautiful, beautiful story. But even though the relationship that is at its center is Celia and Evelyn, her relationships with her husbands are also really important as well. Highly, highly, highly recommend this one. I cannot speak high enough about this. There's another Taylor Jenkins Reid book on this list at the very end because I literally finished it yesterday, and I have so many thoughts about that one that there might actually be like a full book review posted later about that one. So let's move on. Let's not move on. Nothing but Blackened Teeth. Okay, so the concept of this was cool. It's a novella. I thought it was going to be like a really scary read. It follows, I think it's 4 or 5 people. 2 of them are getting married. I didn't care enough to even learn their names. Their names aren't even really in the synopsis on Goodreads. They're getting married. They want to get married in a haunted house for some reason. I can't wrap my mind around that, but they want to get married in a haunted house. So they rent out a haunted house, and basically the way that the house was built, a woman was sacrificed like every year and put into the walls. I don't know, to like placate this ghost who's sad and waiting for her husband to return from war, but he's dead. I have no idea. It was so poorly written. I didn't care at all about the characters. They were all very tropey. Like, you had the nerd and the jock and the pretty girl, and it just, oh my god. And like the comic relief was in there too. Like, it was so tropey, and the villain was so poorly fleshed out. If you've ever watched it's a Japanese movie, it's called House. It came out, I want to say, in the 70s. If you've ever watched that, it's basically that, but take all of the fun and the actual good stuff out of it and replace it with stupid, fluffy nothing. And that's what this is. Not a great story. Like, with a cover that fantastic, I expected to be scared. And I read this and I was just like, why? What was the point? What was the reason? There wasn't one. So, also, there's a point where a man has to literally like jizz onto the floor to like stop this ghost. So if we're talking about things that are ridiculous, there you go. There's your proof. I'm gonna move on now. A Touch of Darkness. So this is the first of 2 Hades Persephone retellings. 3 technically, if you really want to kind of push it, and talk about one of the ACOTAR, if that's what they call them, books. But this is the first one that shows up. It's by Scarlett St. Clair. 3.5 stars out of 5. It's your typical Hades Persephone story. She's hiding from her mom. This one, I think she's like a college student. The retelling takes place in the city, and she has powers, but she like keeps them under control, or she keeps them under a spell so people can't tell she's a goddess. Her powers stem directly from her mother. So if her mom decides to, she can take her powers away. She is falling in love with Hades, who runs like a nightclub, if I remember correctly. I could very well be mixing up my Persephone Hades romances. It was okay. It's part of a series. I wouldn't want to read the other books in the series because I just wasn't thoroughly invested enough to do that. But this one kept my attention. It's got some smut in it. It's a little spicy. So 3.5 stars. The Madwoman's Ball. Wow. Okay. So this one follows Eugenie and Genevieve. Genevieve is a nurse at a asylum, and Eugenie has been incorrectly put into the asylum. There's nothing wrong with her or crazy about her, except she can maybe kind of see ghosts. So the whole story is following Genevieve trying to get Eugenie out of the asylum. The premise was really cool. 3 out of 5 stars because at the end, spoiler alert, here it is, Genevieve ends up being trapped in the asylum herself. She becomes a patient after she helps Eugenie escape, and I just hated that for her character. I just didn't think that there was any situation that would make Genevieve accept that as her fate. And she doesn't fight at all. She's being taken away, and she tells Eugenie to run, I'll hold them back, and she doesn't even try to run away. And then at the end she's like, I thought I'd always end up here. This is what it's like to be normal, or this is where I'm comfortable. And I thought it was so out of character for her. So 3 out of 5 stars. This is the other one that I was kind of if we really want to push it and call this a Hades Persephone retelling, we could. So A Court of Mist and Fury is the sequel to A Court of Thorns and Roses. We follow Feyre, who is now a fairy herself. She is engaged to Tamlin, who suffers the most intense character assassination I've ever experienced in my life. He's basically keeping her locked in the house because he's afraid something bad's going to happen to her because of what happened at the end of the first book. She's also honor-bound to Rhys, who is the lord of, the night something, the Night Kingdom. That's not what they're called. The Night Court. Oh my god. He's the High Lord of the Night Court, and she is supposed to spend, a week with him every month because of some bargain she made when she was under the mountain. So that's where we get this kind of, Hades Persephone situation where, Tamlin is Demeter, and Feyre is Persephone, and Rhys is Hades, and he's trying to save her from her overprotective fiance. I love Rhys. I love his character. I would literally die for that man. The side characters in this one are really cool too. His court are very interesting. I like all of them a lot. The really the kicker here was how much they had to make me hate Tamlin to get me to love Rhys. And I love Tamlin in the first book. So 0.5 off because you butchered my boy, but 4.5 stars because Rhys he's spicy. I like him. I don't know. Once Upon a Broken Heart. So this apparently is a spin-off of the Caraval series. I haven't read that. I got this book in my fairy loot box, so this isn't even the cover I got. I got the pretty pink exclusive edition, which definitely played a part in my appeal to this book. I was like, ooh, she's cute. I could mess with this. So we followed Jack and Evangeline. Jack is the prince or god of broken hearts, and Evangeline has been left by her fiance or her boyfriend for her sister. The sister spells her fiance and they get married. So she makes a deal to stop the wedding, and the long story short of it is that he calls in the favors that she offers or that she gives him, and shenanigans ensue. It's the start of a series. I really like Jack's character. I really like Evangeline's character. It loses a star for me because it does get a little convoluted in terms of the mythos of the books. There are vampires for some reason, which felt weird. There are gods. A god becomes a vampire at one point. There are witches. It was just really wild. So it was a lot. But I would definitely continue reading the series. I would go in and read the other ones if I had the option to go and do that. And soon they'll be out, so I will. So The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. The TikTok girlies are gonna be not happy with me. So we're following Addie, and she made a deal with the devil, or with a devil. It's very clear in the book that he is not just the devil. His name is Luke. That's what she calls him. That's what she names him. She doesn't want to be remembered by anybody. She wants to live her own life. She wants freedom. So he makes it so that literally no one can remember her. So she's wandering around for 300 years, and all she does in that time is like sleep with men and buy, not even buy, steal pretty clothes. She does nothing of import. Um, she meets Henry, who can remember her because he's also made a deal with Luke. And the conflict there is like, how are they going to kind of overcome what Henry bargained with Luke with, which was, spoiler, his life. Um, I think I would have liked this book a lot more if the main romance was Addie and Luke. I love a good, like, enemies to lovers, like, hate to love kind of trope. Henry was so goddamn boring. Oh my god. We get it. Like, your life is hard and people like other people better than you. Like, I'm sorry, be a better person. So I think I would have liked it more if Henry just was not a thing, if he just was not existing in this universe. So 4 out of 5 stars. Better than the movies. This is what I like to call the trope of all tropes. So it basically follows this girl, Liz, and she is looking to impress this boy who came back to her small town who she had a crush on when she was a kid. So she falls into a fake dating trope with this guy, Wes, who is her neighbor and her enemy, and obviously with fake dating, they fall in love. Um, there's conflict. It's not great conflict. It is what it is. It's your stereotypical YA novel. It was an easy read. It was cute. 3 out of 5 stars. There was nothing substantial about it where I was like, yes, I would read this again in a heartbeat. It just was all right. Ooh, Jade Firegold. Okay, so this is what I like to call publishable Zutara fanfiction. So we follow An and Alton. An is this girl. She has magic. She's been hiding it. And Alton is the crown prince of the country, but he is in exile because people think he's dead. So basically, like, they're looking for these swords to kind of straighten everything out and put him back on the throne. 4 out of 5 stars. The world building was really good. Alton's character kind of got on my nerves a little bit. He was just so moody all the time. But the side characters in this were fantastic as well, and so was An herself. Like, I loved her. So I am looking forward to the next book in this series when it comes out. This was another one that I had the Fairy Loot edition of, and again, the pretty cover very much drew me in and made me want to continue reading. Rachel Lynn Solomon, how dare you disappoint me the way that you have. So I read Today, Tomorrow, Yesterday, or Today, Tomorrow, Tonight, whatever book it was that she had out last year or the year before, and I loved it. I was obsessed with it. It was enemies to lovers. It was feuds. It was scavenger hunts. It was beautifully done. This book, I cannot stand either of the characters. Oh my god. So we're following Quinn, right? Quinn's parents are your quintessential, pun intended, wedding planners. So they believe that true love is everywhere, and they are in the wedding planning business, and they want Quinn to join the business after she finishes college. So they've basically planned her entire life out down to her schedule at her school, like her college schedule. Tariq, who is the love interest, works for the caterer that her family hires pretty often to do the weddings. The biggest conflict here is that Quinn's parents separated when she was like 6 for like 6 months, and nobody ever talked about it, and it instilled this belief in Quinn that like magic, or not magic, that love wasn't real and that it can fall apart at any second. And she spends the entire book telling everybody how much she doesn't believe in love. And then you have Tariq, who is really big on love at first sight, and his parents had this really intense meeting at the Eiffel Tower, so he's really big on the huge, like, romantic gesture. And they just keep butting heads over it because they're, like, seeing each other and they're dating, but they refuse to have the conversation about what that relationship means. I was promised, right, when I picked this book up, I was promised kind of like a series of unfortunate meet cutes where, like, they keep running into each other at the weddings, and, like, how will they handle the tension because he knows that she likes him. The tension is handled about 50 pages in. The rest of it is them trying to figure out how to be in a relationship because Quinn is so damn stubborn and Tariq is so damn dumb. No. I wouldn't even give it 2 out of 5 stars. I should really feasibly change this to 1 out of 5 stars because it just was not great. It just was not great. Oh, A Monster Calls. I don't even want to talk about this one because it hurt so bad. Oh my god. So we're following Connor, and he's a little boy. And his mom is sick. She has cancer, I believe, and she's dying, and a monster shows up outside his window, and basically tells him, I'm going to tell you 3 stories, and when I'm done, you have to tell me a story. I don't want to get into it too much because it really is, it's a quick read in terms of length, but it's very emotional and it does hit really, really hard. So I'm just going to leave it at, this is 5 out of 5 stars for me. Highly recommend that you read it on your own. Oh, Joe and Laurie. So this is every basic bitch's rewrite of Little Women. Little Women is one of my favorite books of all time, and I never understood. I'm so sorry to the literary girlies out there. I never understood how Laurie ended up with Amy. So when I saw that somebody had rewritten it so that Joe and Laurie end up together, I was like, yes. I liked it. It just didn't keep my attention. I think that they tried really hard to weave aspects of Louisa May Alcott's life into this, as well as weave the original book into it. And it kind of lost me at points there. So 3.5 stars because I don't think it was what I was expecting it to be, but it did make me feel fulfilled in the sense that like they ended up together and I was pleased, you know. Halsey should not write poetry. That's the review. That's the review. She gets 1 star because this book actually features lyrics from a song of hers that I like, but Halsey should not be writing poetry, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. The X-Hex by Aaron Sterling. I so badly wanted to like this one. It was really hyped up on Book Talk. This follows Vivi. She has cursed her ex-boyfriend Reese, another Reese, and she thinks that the curse that she cast when she was like 19 is just like, fun little curse. They're both witches, by the way. But it turns out that she has actually cursed him. The plot twist in here is so convoluted, it doesn't even make sense. I'm going to talk about it. Spoilers, if you don't want to hear me talk about it, scrub to the next book. Basically, his family founded the town, allegedly, by using her ancestors' blood. So their ancestors knew each other, and his grandfather, great-great-grandfather, killed her great-great-grandmother in order to put the magic into the town. So when she cursed him, her ancestor helped her curse him, and that's why the curse went so badly. Stupid book. Stupid book. I could not care less about these characters. The only reason it gets 2.5 stars is because the side characters are really great. Would not recommend. I am about to donate this book literally at the end of the year in like a week. So Neon Gods is the 3rd Persephone Hades romance. Persephone in this one is not a god. There's no actual gods in it. It's the gods are more like titles, like political titles. So her mother was recently named Demeter. So now she has status, and the Zeus who is there is a 65-year-old man who has killed his last 2 wives. So her mother, who is the new Demeter, marries her off to Zeus. They just announce that she's engaged to him. They don't tell her anything. So she runs away to Hades. Not purposefully. She just crosses into his territory. It's very like mob-esque, like mafia style, where like they can't follow her. And the whole game plan is like, we're going to fake date and you're going to sully me so that he doesn't want me anymore. So the thought process is like they're going to have sex openly in front of people so that word gets back to Zeus that she's not a virgin. She wasn't a virgin to begin with. Whatever. This is the weaker of the 3 Hades Persephone retellings on this list. It was 2.5 stars. It was hot, you know, like it was spicy. There was smut. It was good. But the plot, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. All they do is bang and adopt some puppies and then bang some more. And then he like kills somebody. Like it's a wild ride. If you're looking for like easy smut, there you go. Take it. Oh, we're coming to the end. We're almost there. We've got like 5 more books left, which is good because my throat is killing me. The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. So this is my first Christina Lauren book. If you don't know, they are a duo. They are 2 authors who write together. This one follows, what are their names? Oh my god. Olive again. Jesus. Olive and Ethan. They are the siblings of 2 people who got married. So Olive's sister married Ethan's brother, and they got sick. They got some sort of food poisoning at the wedding, but Olive and Ethan didn't because Olive is like a vegan and Ethan doesn't eat off of buffets. So they don't eat the food, they don't get sick, but they end up taking her sister's free honeymoon because they don't want the trip to go to waste. While they're there, they have to pretend that they're the ones who got married because I guess the honeymoon was won in a contest. So if people find out they're not married, then they'll be charged the entire cost of the honeymoon, which they don't want. Um, it was cute. It was really, really cute. I did thoroughly enjoy all of the little fluffy moments when they were on vacation, but you could literally put a sticky note in the book at the point where the fluff was going to stop. Like, the second they leave the island for vacation, like the second they're coming back from Hawaii, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hate this. Um, the conflict that's in it it doesn't really matter in the long run. It wouldn't matter in a real life relationship. Like, they wouldn't be as devastating. Um, the sister, basically, here's a spoiler warning, spoilers. Olive finds out that her sister's husband has been cheating on her. Um, she tries to tell Ethan, who is the sister's husband's brother. He doesn't believe her, so they break up. She tries to tell the sister doesn't believe her, so they break up. And then it's resolved like a chapter later. Well, they don't break up. She stops talking to her. It's resolved like a chapter later. It's just a really bad plot twist. It's a really poorly done plot device. I would have preferred a different kind of conflict, but 3.5 stars for being cute, and also the snark in this is so good. They're like supposed to be enemies to lovers, and it's just so funny watching them try to interact with each other before they start banging. So, if you're looking for something fun, 3.5. The Wife Upstairs, which is by Rachel Hawkins, who is coincidentally also Erin Sterling. Apparently, she just writes under different pseudonyms. This was advertised to me as a Jane Eyre retelling, and I cannot stress to you, this is the loosest retelling I've ever read in my life. We follow Jane, who is a dog walker. She gets into this relationship with Eddie, who his wife, Bea, recently was just pronounced dead. She went missing. They realized her best friend was murdered the same night, so they assume she's dead. Jane in this is the reason why it's 3 stars, because in Jane Eyre, we kind of see Jane as being this like kind of naive like girl who is falling in love, and she just really just wants a family. She wants a place. Jane in this is a psychopath. She knows exactly what she's doing. She is tricking this man into marrying her because she wants his money. She knows it's fast. She knows that she's doing everything the right way. The self-awareness on her part is what really gets me to like the book. Everything else gets me to hate it. So 3 out of 5 stars. Oh my god, so close to being done, folks. So close to being done. So, The Quantum Weirdness of the Almost Kiss is also one of the worst books I've ever read in my life. We follow Caleb and Evie. They are at this boarding school for super smart science kids. They have been best friends since they were children. Caleb is in love with Evie. Evie has no interest in dating Caleb. Caleb is like the narrator, like the big narrator of this book, in the sense that his narration just takes over, and he is so annoying. If I could punch a book character, I would. He is very much woe is me. Why doesn't she love me? Why does she like him instead? She should be with me. Nobody should be with her except me. I earn the right to be with her. He's the worst. Basically, it follows them as they are applying for this like grant or this scholarship. It's a contest they have to enter with science and math, and it's just this convoluted way of forcing them to be together, and I hated it. It's kind of implied that Evie is like on the ace spectrum, and I didn't like that it was just like, I don't want to be touched, but if it's Caleb, cool, I guess. Like, the relationship felt really toxic to me, if that makes sense. I just was not a fan. I don't know how to properly pronounce this name. Igioeli? Dear Igioeli, A Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions. Fantastic book. Anything that Adichie writes, you should read. I'm just going to leave it at that. Basically, it's a letter that she wrote to her friend because her friend was like, how do I raise a feminist daughter? So she gave her 15 little suggestions on how she can do that, and it's such a good book. It's so important to read if you are having children or if you're even around children. So I'm around kids all the time. I'm a school teacher, and it really made me think about some of the things that we do in the classroom and some of the ways that like my kids interact with each other and the ways that I interact with them. So highly recommend you read that one. A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. I'm like running out of steam. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. We follow Harper and Wren and Gray. Harper is our beauty, Wren is our beast, and Gray is the stoic commander of the guard. This book is really good for a lot of reasons. Harper has cerebral palsy, and this is what I mean by like solid positive representation. there are multiple instances where people call her broken or where they like try to kind of coddle her and tell her she can't do things. And she's like, this is how my body was born. This is what I am. We're all going to have to just deal with it. If you don't like it, go away. She's a really strong protagonist. Ren is basically like cardboard. He's not a really fleshed out character. He's really, really annoying. But Gray is the best. Would die for Gray. It's kind of established that there's like a love triangle situation there. Like Gray definitely has feelings for Harper, and Harper definitely has feelings for Gray. I'm not going to read the rest of the series because I was told that that kind of drops off. And I really liked Gray's character, and I would have loved for him to end up with Harper, but I don't think that that's what happens. So I'm going to leave it at this one and call it 4 out of 5. And then the last one, the one that I finished yesterday, Daisy Jones and the Six. So we're following Daisy, and she is a singer. It's the 70s. She joins this band, the Six, and their frontman, Billy, is like this really gruff guy who just wants nothing to do with her because she is like heavily addicted to drugs and he is sober. And it's written like manuscript style, like interview style. And it follows the band throughout their entire history as a band, all the albums they write, all the songs they write, and you kind of see this relationship between Daisy and Billy start to develop. But the problem is that Billy is married and he has 3 children. So that's the big conflict. She does this really cool thing where it's kind of like a picture isn't, or a story isn't exactly what you think it is, and she'll tell the same story from both Daisy and Billy's perspective, and you can see the differences between them. And again, with Taylor Jenkins Reid, there's always a point in her books where I have to put them down and close them because the side characters are so lovable and sometimes they don't always make it to the end of the book. I'm just going to leave it at that. This is probably like my God tier read of the year. 5 out of 5 stars. It could just be because it's fresh in my head because I read it yesterday, but it was very, very good. Very strong book. That is the last book that I read this year. I am still reading 2 books. I'm reading A Court of Mist and Fury, and I'm reading The Library of Lost Things. I doubt I'll finish A Court of Mist and Fury by the end of the year. I think that's the one I'm reading now. Or is that the one that I already read? I don't know. Whatever the third one is. I don't think I'll finish that by the end of the year because I just am not invested in it. But I will probably finish The Library of Lost Things. It's just not going to be included in this video. Yeah, I'm gonna probably start uploading book review videos instead of like little hobby videos, and they'll likely be in this format because I'm not really ready to show anybody my face. So if you like this, please put a like down there. If you want to comment with your opinions, I would love to have a conversation about books. I love talking about books. If you like my content, subscribe. But I think that that's all that I have for you. Yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.